All right, I want to talk about the setup of Unity events and actions, specifically when they support recompile and continue, and you have domain reloading turned off. I was recently on a project, a very large project, that had domain reloading as a very necessary function on it, domain reloading being turned off. And that damaged some of the architecture that I am used to being able to apply and has worked in pretty much every other project I've worked on. When reloading times and compile times are taking a minute and a half for you just to be able to start the scene when you press play, even without a code change, that becomes untenable. You need to have domain reloading turned off. The solution is that when we're wiring objects up, such as statics, such as events and actions, we need to do it during OnEnable. That solution is not the reason that you're here. The real reason is to figure out why. Why does it need to happen that way? Because when you're facing problems like this, you're going to face more problems like this. And you need to understand the nature of why this is important here. So let's dive in. Why turn off domain reloading? When it's on or off, the scene is already loaded in the editor. I don't want you to think of the objects that it shows in the hierarchy as something other than your actual game objects with your actual scripts loaded and running in memory. They just don't have the start, the awake, or the update functions being executed. When domain reloading is active and you try starting a scene, it's going to erase all the objects in memory and then reload them. It guarantees the state. It makes sure that all the static settings are out. If you have tooling that is messing around with these objects and has any static ties in it, that can still be retained. And when you exit play mode and come back, it's doing this again or something similar to it when it reloads the objects to put them back in the original state. It's protecting you by doing that. However, of course, that takes time. You can take control of this yourself to get that performance back. I mean, just looking at a default project in Unity, it's 1 second for an empty project. Well, in my case, I only had like one line of code, but this was a core URP project with nothing else in it. In larger projects, I mean, I was seeing this take a minute and a half upwards. And let's actually see an example. I press play and there was this compiling domain. And so let's turn it off, run it again, and completing domain again, about a second or more. And now over in the editor and project settings, we're going to find play mode options and make sure domain reloading is off, but the options are on. And then we hit play, it's instant. Hit play again, instant. It was already there. There was no reloading. There was no pop-up. Everything was available instantaneously. If you want to turn this off, is that you go over to project settings, editor, and then enter play mode settings, and you have reload domain turned off. So the only reason to turn this on is because you are disabling these features. All right, I'm not going to get into the scene reload. There's nuances to that as well, but that's not what I'm covering here. When we do this, our events are lost. Some of them anyway. So when we have anything tied up through system.action, that's lost. Anything through Unity event.addListener, so we did this with a C# code and we added a reference, that's lost as well. But anything that was wired in the IDE through a Unity event is retained. Now, Unity's recommended solution is broken in this circumstance. If you go to domain reloading, to their domain reloading manual page, you will find an explanation of adding Runtime InitializeOnLoadMethod attribute. So you put that in there, and then it's also talking about how you remove references here so that things are not getting added twice, because that's one of the problems you run into. Now, the thing is that when you have recompile and continue playing also active on this, then it doesn't support this anymore. The function never even gets called. So I was beating my head against the wall for a little while trying to figure this out. What I actually did, let me go over to Unity for a second. Inside of Unity, you can see over here, this is after a recompile and continue playing because the onAfterDeserialize is executed. Now OnEnable has executed. Literally inside of this code, it's very easy. All of these different events like start and awake and onAfterDeserialize, they just log and identify that onAfterDeserialize is run. Start has run, awake has run, OnEnable has run. So in this case, we see onAfterDeserialize is run, OnEnable has run. I'm going to stop my code. I'm going to restart my code. Whoops. I'm going to restart my code if it registers a click. Okay, so inside of here, we see it's got more deserializations, awake, OnEnable. So in both instances, OnEnable gets called the first time I'm executing it, and also during any recompile and continue. And also that's with or without domain reloading on. So anytime I'm wiring stuff up now, my solution will include OnEnable. If you have any other circumstances that you run into in your code where you run into a problem and it's not working, please feel free to share that out about the sequence of events that's happening, and we can end up developing some solution for this. All right, talk to you later.